Our first reading today comes from the book of Genesis, portions of chapter 8. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed, and the rain had stopped falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the water had gone down, and on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so that they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." So Noah came out, together with his sons and his wives, his wife and his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground and all the birds, everything that moves on land, came out of the ark, one kind after another. And from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, verses 25 through 30. At that time, Jesus said, "I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you are pleased to do. All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." May God bless the hearing and the living of this word. And from the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg, Secrets of Heaven, number 905. Going out of the ark symbolizes freedom. The time that Noah spent in the ark, surrounded by flood water, symbolized being in captivity, that is, being tossed about by evil and falsity, or what amounts to the same thing, by the evil spirits who spark our spiritual struggles. From this, it follows that leaving the ark symbolizes freedom. The Lord's presence involves freedom. The one is the consequence of the other. The more present the Lord is, the freer we are. In other words, the more we love goodness and truth, the more freely we act. That is the nature of the Lord's influence, coming by way of angels. Hell's influence, on the other hand, coming by way of evil spirits, brings with it the forceful effort to dominate. Those spirits connive at nothing else than to put us so completely under their yoke that we become nothing and they become everything. And when they are everything, then we are one of them, and hardly even one of them, but like a nobody in their eyes. Consequently, when the Lord is freeing a person from their yoke and dominion, conflict arises. But once a person has been set free, that is, regenerated, they are led by the Lord through angels so gently that no yoke or dominion exists at all. For they are being led by what is joyful and pleasing. They are being loved. They are being shown respect. This is what the Lord teaches in Matthew. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. So there is a story about Swedenborg that is beloved by his followers, and it goes like this. A young girl who grew up in Swedenborg's neighborhood kept asking him to show her an angel. So one day he agreed, and took her inside his summer house and placed her in front of a curtain. And he said, "Now you shall see an angel." And he drew the curtain aside, revealing a mirror in which the girl could see her own reflection. This charming anecdote gets at the heart of Swedenborg's optimistic and humane theology. He says many times during his works, all human beings are born for heaven. Yes, we have to make the conscious choice to follow this path, but it is nonetheless God's intention for all of us. Now, contrast this with the vision of Jonathan Edwards, an American preacher of the same period, who preached a famous sermon called "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God," whereby he described each of us as being spiders held by a slender thread over a pit of hell by a wrathful God who abhors us, and that it is God's hand alone that prevents our burning forever. Certainly, Edwards must have imagined that the specter of such a fate would provoke a necessary anxiety in his listeners so that they might surrender to God's grace. Fear persuades. And we know this not only from religion, but from politics and advertising and our own lives. But fear can only take us so far. It can motivate external action, but it cannot create a heavenly internal, a heart built on the stuff of heaven, mutual love. Mutual love can only be embraced through the relinquishment of fear, of self-preservation, and of resentment. We can only love when we make ourselves vulnerable, make ourselves empty of our presumptions, and trust in a God who desires our eternal happiness above all. Swedenborg's positive vision includes such a God, one that begins with the assumption of our belovedness, not our sinfulness. And this can be such an important grounding or counterpoint to hold on to as we bravely encounter the necessary reflection involved in the season of Lent. Lent is about being committed to loving the truth, even when that truth indicates we need to change. It is about being devoted to learning how to love others, even if that means hearing what we don't want to hear. It is about trusting that the faithful practice of self-relinquishment means that the vision of our true angelic selfhood in that mirror will become ever clearer. As Swedenborg puts it, Lent is about finding the power to resist love for ourselves and love of the world, and preventing those loves from taking control. It is simple, but it is not small. It is straightforward, but it is not easy. The work continues throughout our lives because the way to heaven is not a test, but a journey. And the central question of that journey is not so much, what do I need to do to become an angel? The question is, how free do I want to be? We heard in our text today about the moment that Noah and his family and all the animals were finally able to leave the ark. They had been set afloat and tossed around by the flood waters for almost a year, and finally the waters had receded. And we note from our Swedenborg reading that leaving the ark symbolizes the freedom that occurs when we open ourselves to the presence of God. I quote, "The more present the Lord is, the freer we are." In other words, the more we love goodness and truth, the more freely we act. End quote. The world, our egos, will have plenty to say about who we are and who we should be. The influences of hell piggyback on these messages that we receive, intent on subjugating and dominating us, decreasing our sense of hope and possibility. We will hear, "You are not enough. You are too much. You need to look this way, own this thing, choose this product." We will hear, "You shouldn't help them. It's not your responsibility. It's a hoax. It's fake news. You should be very, very scared." We will hear, "You must control this. You must control them, own them, destroy them, get your way, get all the power, and never apologize." We will hear, "Your anxiety will prevent it. Your disowning them will teach them. Be small, be quiet, close your eyes, scroll your phone." And so, We remain surrounded by the flood water, gulping for breath, splashed and sprayed and shivering in an ark only 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, when instead we could be living in the whole wide world. The more we buy into what hell is selling us, the smaller and more cramped our world will be. But the more we love goodness and truth, the more freely we act. The more we love goodness and truth, the more we are brought into the influence of the Lord and the angels. We read further. But once a person has been set free, that is, being regenerated, they are led by the Lord by angels so gently that no yoke or dominion exists at all. For they are being led by what is joyful and pleasing. They are being loved. They are being shown respect. The influence of hell means only to make us nothing, and out of that nothing to have us strike out, plunder, and scream, to fill a void that can never be filled, to make ever more minuscule a selfhood that knows it was made for love, and to make ever larger a selfhood that is captive to avarice and superiority and fear. This is a desperate search for freedom that has instead settled on a lack of restraint. The influence of heaven, however, is not undergirded by domination, but by love and respect. The irony is that hell would have us be nothing as an insult to break us down. But heaven would have us be nothing so that there is room for us to learn how beloved we are. The more present the Lord is, the freer we are. And now it might not always feel that way. As we grapple with the complexities of our lives, as the good choice, the right choice becomes less and less obvious in an interconnected and interdependent world, we might well feel less free, more confused, increasingly ambivalent. This is, of course, normal and reasonable. Freedom is not the same thing as decisiveness or clarity. Freedom is not the same thing as ease or flow. Freedom is simply about having the ability to choose who we will serve in any given moment. Freedom is about letting God pull back the curtain from that mirror and seeing our reflection there, and then really believing that it is us, that it is our future and our present. And when we believe that it is true, when we know that it is so, the stakes change. We are no longer trying to be good enough, but to live into what is already true about us, into what God has already ordained for us. And on this road, even our flaws and our mistakes become a pathway for learning, a way to embrace a blessed emptiness into which God pours a love that rebuilds us. Amen.